I'm Rebecca, and today's topic is going to be my budgeting template version 5.0. I created this budgeting template in Google Sheets to suit the way that I see money, so that's why it's organized the way that it is. I hope it makes sense to you, but if it doesn't, you can always create your own budgeting template or even write it out in a notebook, old school style. There are 3 tabs we're going to be walking through. The first one is personal budget overview. The second one is side income budget overview. And then finally, the paycheck by paycheck budget. Up top, we have this summary section, which we're not going to touch anything except for the I want to see my totals drop down. I like to just keep this on monthly by default, but I also included bi-weekly, weekly, yearly, although note that for weekly, it's not going to adjust based off of whatever month you're in. That's just going to blanketly default to assuming that there are 4.3 weeks in a month because that's the average. All right, so we're just gonna leave it on monthly. Our first section we're going to fill out is the income section. We want to name it. So where did this money come from? The amount, let's say $2,300. And then frequency wise, let's say bi-weekly. Now, even though bi-weekly means every 2 weeks I get a paycheck, it's not going to calculate anything. Like if we see in our summary tab, it says $2,300, just like I say here. So if I do get paid multiple times in a month, I need to list it out the same amounts. You can enter the date you get your paycheck if you would like, and then you can add a little note for yourself. I don't really know what this note would be, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to have a section for one. Next, we want to fill out our debt. So I always put this one at the very top because I think it's the thing we want to look at the least. So we just want to knock it out and get it out of the way. So we're going to enter the name of it. Let's do a car loan. Total amount. That's the total amount that's remaining in the loan balance. The interest for that, 5.09%, the monthly minimum. And then what I'm paying. The monthly minimum might be the same as what you're paying if you're paying the monthly minimum, but if you're paying a little bit more or a little bit less, that's the number we actually want to factor in. So if you're just paying the monthly minimum, you can copy paste, but when I was paying my car loan, I was paying a little bit over. So the actual number was $300. Debt type, I've listed a few common options, but I did leave other, just in case it's other. So car loan, and then again, notes. So I don't know if you're need to call the loan officer for this one, or remember XYZ, or these payments are paused, little things for yourself so that you know what's going on with that thing. You can leave it over there. Now let's talk about spending money. So spending money is the thing that we're gonna use to spend money, just on the daily. So food, transportation, if I need to replace my deodorant, if I need to buy shampoo, if I need a new notebook, anything that's just I'm spending money in my life, I wanna try and factor it into this section. Now by default, when I was an individual single person only thinking about what I need to spend money on, my weekly, I like to see it weekly, my weekly budget was $200, which sounds really low now. But this is how I broke it up. I did $110 for food, $60 for transportation, and then $30 for discretionary spending. So discretionary spending needed to cover everything. So if I wanted to go out with my friends, if I wanted to see a movie, and then those little necessities I labeled earlier. Again, you can adjust this. Since I'm married and I live with my husband and we have dual expenses, I think that more realistically, this is what our situation would look like. So $230 for food, and then probably just an even $100 for transportation, and then discretionary spending doubles. We would each get $30, but even more so than that, we have a dog. Discretionary spending for her, let's bump it up to $80. Okay, so that could be a default as well, but we need to label a frequency. This is important because the monthly cost, this number right here, which is a 0 right now, that's what's going to be factored into our summary total. So in order for that to populate, I need to say, I'm looking at this at a weekly view. Weekly, and then we see that number go up. So this is my monthly spending expense based off of this estimate. You don't have to get it perfectly right. It doesn't have to be right on the money. If you want it to be as accurate as possible, review your transaction history on all of your cards. If you pay with a lot of cash, can't help you there. But unless you keep your receipts, that would be helpful. But just getting a gauge on where you think you are, where you hope to be. And then if you're kind of totally in the dark here, I would highball it just a little bit. Just assume you're spending 10% more than you think you are. I remember having a conversation with my brother, and he got DoorDash every day, so much. This was years ago. And we were talking about our budget, and he goes, yeah, I think I easily spend under $100 a week. on food. Like, that's easy. And I was saying, I don't think that's the case. So we looked through his transaction history, and he was about $400, $450 on a weekly basis. Very different from the assumption. So take that anecdote and apply it to your situation if it applies. Okay. This is also where, like, you can get more specific if you want to. So instead of saying $80 for discretionary spending, what is that? Is that his spending? Her spending? Is that for the dog? Is this setting aside money for vehicle expenses in the future? Like, what does this consist of? Okay, it can be top line, high level, descriptive, just like I've done here, or it can be more granular. Just do whatever suits the way that you see money. Okay, then we need a category. So is this an essential? Yeah, food is essential. I would say transportation's essential. Discretionary spending, depending on what is in the discretionary spending, could be essential, could be not essential. I'm just gonna label it extra. A bit of a controversial move, but in order to get more accurate, I'd need to break out the categories of what I consider to be within discretionary spending. Okay, now we move on to expenses. All right, let's just do basic. We're gonna go rent, the amount for that. Oh, sure. And then frequency, monthly, perfect. Category, is this an essential or an extra? It's an essential. And then action, okay? This will come into play later. We're gonna talk, I guess I can talk about it now. So if this was a subscription, like, I don't know, Netflix or Hulu, or a blind box subscription, or a book subscription, I guess, I could label this and be like, okay, I see this on my bank statement, I want to cancel it, so I need to label cancel. I want to negotiate it, so threaten to cancel maybe, and then see if they give you a discount. I want to downgrade, or I want to keep it. So that's just like, if I have any action items for that, I want to label them out so I can remember later if I don't do it immediately upon labeling it like this. Now let's say I have a bill that I only pay once a year or twice a year, like insurance. I can still include that in the section because I want to set aside a little bit of money for that every single month. I don't want to just like try and scrounge up that money when the bill hits. I want to be prepared for it. So like motorcycle insurance, that's a yearly expense. I label it yearly. So what this monthly cost section is going to do, again, we have to fill out frequency. We have to make sure that there's something in the monthly cost section because that's what goes into our summary totals. That's what feeds the whole entire template. So do not just stop at filling out the amount. So the yearly, we see that it's yearly. It's going to do 520 divided by 12 months. So we get 43.33 is the actual cost of that per month. Same thing for 6 months. Now let's say we have something that it's not an option on here. The frequency just isn't included. Do some mental math, write it out on a piece of paper and figure out what the monthly cost is so that you can still include it in this template. Moving over to the investing section. Now I think the thing that is most common for us to invest in is our 401k through work. I don't really suggest including it on here because if you're contributing to your 401k, then that's automatically coming out of your paycheck. So by the time you get the income amount that you're likely entering up here in this income section, it's already factored in. So I don't want to like accidentally subtract that amount twice. So we're just going to go ahead and skip over to the IRA. So if you have a 401k, but you don't have a Roth IRA, open one right now. Okay. So we're going to list that. Roth IRA, bank name, I have mine with Fidelity. Whoa, how do you spell that? Fidelity. Account type, retirement. Account balance, I think it's at $30,000 for me right now. Yearly goal or yearly max for 2026, it's $7,500. Year-to-date investments, nothing for me so far. Now the monthly contribution I would like to make, I feel like $100 is like a fine baseline. So if I did $100 for the whole year, that would land, that's not right, multiplied by 12, that would land me at $1,200 at the end of the year. Something is better than nothing. So what I want to do right now, let me look at the summary. Okay, I have $556 remaining. So $556 of my career paycheck is not promised to anything right now, but we haven't filled out the saving section of things yet. So keeping that in mind, I think I will just put it at that $100. Okay, now if we have a brokerage account, let's do, that would also be with Fidelity. This is just classic brokerage. Account balance, there. Yearly goal, there's no max for a brokerage account. You can contribute as much as you want, so we don't need to put anything for there. 0, and then I'm not gonna put anything in my brokerage account as of right now. That said, if you have other accounts, list them. But yeah, we're gonna move on to savings. Number 1, the emergency fund. Very important, everyone should have it. Emergency fund. I consider my emergency fund to be like if my life falls apart or if like something truly, truly unexpected happens. So the goal for this right now is, let's do $15,000. Currently saved, let's say we have $5,000 saved. Months to save? Like 6 months, that seems like a nice time frame. Okay, so the monthly goal, this is just a reference. The other ones that we've looked at so far, the monthly section that was a formula has been essential for the overarching summary. Not this one. This one is showing us what we should aim to contribute every single month if we want to reach our goal by the time frame we've set. So if you're like, dang, that's way too much. Okay, what if I give myself 10 months? Okay, $1,000 is my goal. Still more than what I'm able to swing right now, but okay. And then you can play with this until it gets to a realm that you're rocking with, okay? Now, I'm gonna leave it there, even though $625 is not what I'm gonna be able to swing every single month based off this budget. And instead I'm gonna look up here. Okay, I have $456 remaining. I know I have more savings goals to go ahead of me, so I'm gonna enter those now. Let's say we got a Japan trip coming up. My goal for that, $3,000. Currently saved, 0. Month to save, let's do 6 again. $500. All right, a little bit less wiggle room on that one. Now let's say we already have a trip plan that's happening in 6 months. The only thing I can tweak here, because I don't have enough money to cover that, is I can either look at my bills and decide what I wanna cut back on, negotiate, or totally get rid of, to try and free up some dollars every single month that I could put towards my Japan trip, or I can adjust my goals. So I can say, all right, maybe $2,500 will work. Okay, well that's gonna take a lot of my money, and I'll be able to put $40 towards my emergency fund. Am I okay with that? Not really, so we're gonna bump it down once more. Okay, let's do $350 for Japan. And then what do I have remaining is my question. $106.27. We can go $106.27 just right on the money. You can do $100 and then be like, that $6 is my wiggle room every single month in case something needs a little bit more. Level of importance, this is more so of a reference if you have like a lot of savings goals on your mind. So you want to label the ones you really care about, and then you can let go of the ones that you don't really care about. Let's do it. Both of them are high because we're assuming the Japan trip is already on the map. It's happening whether you have money or not, so it's a high savings priority. And now we look up here and we go, okay, it's a positive number. If it's a 0 or a positive number, perfect. We don't need to do anything else. If it's a negative number, we need to rework a few things just to reference it, or just to get like a gauge on how things are looking. We can see this donut chart here, and I see that my expenses take up 64% of my income, which is a lot. That feels like a very large amount. So, all right, our ratio, because usually the ratio of what it takes to be alive, necessities, wants, and long-term is the 50-30-20. So 50% going towards expenses, and I would even loop in expending here, because food and transportation and even the discretionary things, if we're just talking about hygienic products and different things like that, those could all be considered necessities. So what's 64 plus 17? This ratio is crazy right now. Okay, 64% plus 17%. 80% on living? About 10%, all right, a little bit over 11% for investing, and then 6.5% is going to debt payment. Once the debt payment is taken off the books, then that can be absorbed into the other stuff, which will help. But yeah, I don't know, it's interesting to see it like this. Okay, now we can move on to the next tab, which might not be relevant for a lot of people, but it's relevant for me, and that's why I put it in here. We got side income budget overview. This is very similar to the personal budget overview, but this one is compartmentalized for our side income. So like all of these, I'm not going to go through them: spending, savings, expenses, self-explanatory, income. What's important here is this is different. The summary does look different. We do touch more things. By default, the like classic rule of thumb advice is to set aside 30% of like side income that is not pre-set aside money for taxes. 30%. Okay, I leave mine at 30%, but you can override it. You can be like, well, I just need 20%. I just need 15%, you know, depending on your situation. I put it by default 30%. I didn't even label that you could update that, but you can. Where it gets tricky, and I'm still a little bit working on it, is the spending and savings. I like to break it up by percent. You could choose to break it up by dollar amount, but you cannot choose differently. So like if one's dollar and the other one's percent, they both have to be dollar, or they both have to be percent. Okay, you can't have percent be one and the dollar be the other. Otherwise it'll break the formula, unfortunately. But I like to leave it at just straight up percent. So all of the side income that I get after I set aside money for expenses, after I set aside money for taxes, I put 10% back into my business, aka spending. And then the rest, which is savings, goes to my personal savings. So you can interpret that however you want. You can say all the money I make from the business, it's going to go back to the business. It's just a conversation of whether or not it's going to go to the business spending account or the business savings account. Either way, this is just a way to split up the money easily, okay? Same thing remaining. You can see monthly totals differently if you would like. I just leave it on monthly. And that's that. That's the side income tab. Now we've got the paycheck by paycheck budgeting tab, which is one of my favorites. This is something that I decided to create after I talked to a friend of mine who we've always been on different income levels, and she has very much been a like skating, or like, what is it, escaping by the skin of her teeth every single month for bills. Like she needs to know exactly when bills hit so she can put money into an account to handle that situation. Whereas I've always seen it as a like, I get a bi-weekly paycheck that is exactly the same every single time, so I didn't need to think about it this hard. But when I started doing this, when I started wanting to get into budgeting and really understanding where my dollars are going, being more hands-on, oh, I loved this view. So how it works is all the information we put onto the personal budget overview tab and the side income budget overview tab for totaling our expenses, for totaling our spending, all of those totals are going to funnel over here. So I see, okay, my side hustle bills, $465 or $467, personal bills, $2,000, spending money, like all these totals that I filled in, those are my goals. Those are now my reference point of what I know I'm aiming for. So how it works is, let's say I get paid, let's say career paycheck comes in, $2,300. I don't need to set aside money for taxes. All of these are going to be by default 0 because could be a career paycheck, could be a side income paycheck. All of them can go onto this tab. So percent for taxes, don't need to worry about it. Don't need to worry about any of these blue categories. If you don't have side income, if you're like, all I have is my career paycheck and I like it that way and I don't need any of these blue, here's what you can do. You can highlight these and then go hide columns. There you go. Okay, it looks very, very clean. For this example that we're gonna walk through, I do need to see all of these. So unhide columns. Great. Skating by these because I don't want any of my career paycheck money to go towards my side hustle stuff. Don't need it to at this point. All right, now I have two options. What I could do is I could say like, okay, for personal bills, I want 50% of that to come from the paycheck. Like I could just split it straight down the middle, but I don't have to. I don't have to make that assumption. Like I want the answer to be, where am I moving my money? How much money do I need to put into my personal bills account? So that's how I'm approaching this. Let's say I want to do, let's do $1,300 to personal bills, okay? And then we'll do $400 because I need that money to be alive for the next 2 weeks before I get my next paycheck. Savings, $200, and then I can see how much money do I have left. All right, we'll do, I already know that $300. Okay, and this one too, sorry. The debt one has 2 drop downs. You can do what's my minimum amount that I have to pay, and then I can do total balance, right? So it's not going to show us the monthly payment that we predetermined we're gonna do ourselves. I figured I know that, oh, let me do this. Debt. I know that the 221 is baseline, but I just want to go off of vibe. So I can either choose to do the minimum or I can do it differently. And then remaining 100, let me do $100 for investing. Now let's say I'm doing a side hustle paycheck income, or I guess I could keep a consistent side income. That paycheck, let's say $1,500, right? Yeah. I do want to put 30% aside for taxes. And then the bills, gotta knock that out. 467.05. You know, actually, I'm gonna real-time update this formula because I want taxes to be taken out before bills, because bills are typically a tax write-off depending on what the bill is. So let me do, I want D10, not D10, C10 to be minus whatever I put here. Okay. Yeah, great. We'll go with that. Fabulous, now it's totally updated. Okay, so the taxes will factor in anything that's a bill, because bills come out as a deductible before taxes. Perfect, and then I can decide, how much do I have left? We have $723.07 left. The only downside of doing it this way, well, I guess I could mentally do it. I could take a calculator to this and say like, what's 10% of remaining in myself though, because otherwise it'll be a cyclical value error. We don't want that. Or I can go off of vibes, which typically when I do the paycheck this way, I'm going off of vibes. So 723, I'm gonna do 123.07. 2307, and then how much do I have remaining? $600. So $600 goes to savings. And that's that. That's the whole thing. For more content on personal finance as well as wellness, make sure you like and subscribe and leave a little comment. All right, until next time, bye.